Hey, I'm Jeff the Junk Seller, and this presentation is going to be about the market that I did at Buffalo Gap, just south of Abilene, this past month in December. I think that I got out there on like the 20th. We stayed out there from the 20th through, I believe, the 24th. The market, I only sold at the market for 3 days, and two of those days I really collected pretty decent amount of money. On Saturday I think I made $603, and then on a Sunday I took in $102. Even though it was so close to Christmas, we still had shoppers out there, and I sold some pretty good stuff. Even though the crowd was really light. I went out early so that I could do some shopping, and I made it to an antique mall. I found some postcards, of which I have these pictures, and some of them were pretty interesting. There were a couple of discontinued post offices, one of them being Peters, Texas, which is in the Hellbach book, which I'll run through the Hellbach series, the book in a little bit about that Richard Hellbach did a census data on the postmarks, and there's a scarcity index for the postmarks, and Peters is supposed to be on that index scale, is supposed to be a scarcity index of 2, and the other postmark that I got was Milheim, and that post office closed on 1913, 1915, something like that, and that is a scarcity index 4. Now, the scarcity index 4, in the guide in the Hellbach books, says that they should sell in the $15 to $25 range, and that's for a good mark on with the stamp retained and all that other information. Now, on mine, the stamps had been removed because they were putting hidden messages under the stamps. It was something that they did, in the, I'm going to say, predominantly you see that in the teens, 1910 to 1920 or so. There were a lot of hidden messages. Sometimes they were done really well, and it will add a premium. Most of the time, not. They just put something like "see you later" or something like that on there. But anyway, Hellbach scarcity index 4 should sell for $15 to $25 if it's perfect. And I got all of these. I got a whole mess of them. Unfortunately, I've misplaced them already, and I can't show them to you. But I think I spent, the first time that I went to the mall was before the sale, and I didn't have very much money, and I think I only spent like 20 some odd dollars on postcards. I got a couple from Cat Springs, which was they had a blue postmark with MOB on it, and those postmarks, that mark is money order business. And that postmark wasn't supposed to be used for canceling stamps. So it's I don't know, it's an off mark, a special mark, a fancy mark. But those are probably going to be worth $15 to $20. I can't find any comps on this stuff. I've looked for MOB cancellations, and they appear to be fairly scarce. There's not a field of collectability, well, they are collectible, but there's not a lot of it in the marketplace. In fact, I couldn't find any in the marketplace. But and I'm going to be interested in finding out what those marks are actually worth. But I went back a second time, and that's when I got all the Milheim cards. After the sale, I went back there. I'd made a little bit of money. I was a little bit more comfortable in spending, and I think I spent $35 on postcards. But and that was the only real find that I made for the whole month of December. I mean, sales were down, and I didn't really collect a whole bunch of good inventory while I was out there. But that's about like the industry, the business sometimes is much better than it is at other times, and you just have to take the good with the bad. And this time it was a little down, but I'm gonna go back there in a couple of weeks, and I will have another report to make about that market. It does seem to be yuppies. They're spending better. They're a little more free with their money than the public used to be there 4 years ago. But a lot of people are in there, I think, for the AI installation that's going on in Abilene. But I'm crazy about paper, and I can talk to you about it until you go insane. A lot of people would think that this stuff is important, but the Hellbach books that I got, I spent $225 on the set of books just to figure out the operating dates of post offices and whether they were discontinued or not. But I recorded the first part of this presentation a couple of days ago, and I forgot to put in the most interesting part of what happened at the Buffalo Gap sale. I had 3 instances where people came to me trying to make some kind of deal on coins, and 3 of them in the same show on the same day within a matter of hours of each other, and every one of them was insane. And the lesson here is that you need to be your own expert, have your own basis of information that you're operating from, because each one of these guys was nothing but misinformation. The first guy, he had a 1787 8 real coin, silver coin, a large silver coin, and had a large hole drilled in it. It was worn nearly smooth, and as a coin, it was really nothing more than scrap silver, even though it had a 1787 date on it. At the time, it was worth about $50, and he was after a coin that I had that it was a large Roman bronze, about a $300 coin, because I've got documents that came with it, nib, pin, written description, and it came out of a collection that predated 1909. It was the provenance on the coin, even though it wasn't an established collection, we know that it was an old collection. It wasn't a famous collector. But he wanted that that coin. I told him, I said, that's a $250 coin. I said, it's a good coin. It's top of the mark for this species, and you're trying to trade me scrap silver. And he did not want to have his coin called scrap silver, but that's really all that it was. And he wanted to work a flat trade, one for the other. And there was I would have been cutting myself about $200 short, and I would have been giving up something that was really pretty special. It was a good value at $250, $300 for something that was nothing but scrap silver that I could get 80% on. I could have gotten paid $40 for that, and for that $50 worth of silver. And then another guy out there, he used to be a local. He moved. I think he's got some senility issues or something. Because the deals that he was offering me had a big bag of Buffalo nickels. I mean, probably 800 or 1,000 nickels. And he wanted $2 a piece for them. And some of them were worn smooth. I can't get but 50 cents for a smooth Buffalo nickel, for a dateless. And he thought that he could get $2 a piece if I bought them all, is what he was telling me. And there was just no way that I could do that. And he told me that a lady at some bank south of there gave him $2 bills for every one of them. He would give her 50 of them and get 50 $2 bills, but had a stack of $2 bills like 8 inches tall, and he didn't want any more $2 bills. And I told him, well, you should go and trade her the rest of these, until but he was trying to tell me he didn't want $2 bills. It was just a bizarre story. But he also had a folder full of steel pennies, and
he told me that those were $100 each, and he had them in an album, and he told me that he had a standing offer of $7,000 for the folder, and I was like, yeah, those pennies I can actually. I have a friend in Oklahoma City that had a whole bucket full of these. They were in the same kind of condition, and I mean a lot of his were even rusty, and I can buy those steel pennies for $1.50 a roll, and I take them to the flea market. I sell them for too much money. I put them out there in a big old bowl, and I have 25 cents each or five for $1, and I sell an awful lot of steel pennies, and they're overpriced at that. They really should be more like 10 for $1, but if I put them out there for 10 for $1, I just don't sell them. They have to feel like if I've got them at 10 for $1, they worry that they're all counterfeit, because there's a lot of vendors out at the flea market that sell steel pennies for $5 each. But this guy was trying to push this album on me. He wanted to know what kind of offer I'd make on it, and I was like, dude, it's $3, and he thought that it was $7,000, or said that he thought that it was $7,000. But then he told me that any pennies, because the government has stopped minting pennies, that pennies are $1 each, and he had a couple of bottles that hadn't been gone through, and I was like, yeah, I really don't care about that stuff. And he was offering me. He said, I think there's 1,000 pennies in there, and I'd take $800 for it. And 1,000 pennies is $10, and there's still pennies everywhere. And I don't know who he thought he was talking to, but he was just on some insane stuff, and it took up probably an hour of my time, and I was in it probably 3 minutes before I knew that this wasn't for me. And but he still had to present this stuff, and had to tell me all kinds of stuff about coins I never even heard of, like the $100 steel pennies. But I had that happen, and then I had a Mexican man come along, and I have these peso coins, 1964. They're 10% silver, and maybe a 20th of an ounce of silver in each of them. And I had a price of $4 each on them, which was actually about what melt was on it on that day. And he was like, why so much? And I showed him, and he told me that all Mexican silver coins are 720. That's what he knows. There are some 72% Mexican coins, but he said he was trying to tell me that all Mexican coins were 72%, which is absolutely not true. And he wanted to flip one, and he flipped it in the air off of his thumb, and it didn't ring, and he told me that meant that it wasn't silver, and he wanted to argue the point. And he was 20-25 feet away from me, still arguing about it. And there was a young Mexican kid there, and he was watching it. And I just told the guy, I said, look, we can go on Google and find out that is 10% silver. And he told me that Google was wrong, that he knew more because he grew up in Mexico, and all Mexican silver coins are 720 or 72%. And I just told him, I said, well, me and the rest of the world believe that it's 10% silver. And the young kid was sitting there watching me out of the corner of his eye. And when the guy finally shut up and was gone, I just looked to the kid and I said, you can't help everybody. And he said, man, that guy was just out of his mind. But coins is one of the things that it will get you all kinds of strange attention when you set up at the flea market. It's something that a lot of people have strange notions about. And the thing that when you first start selling coins, the thing that you're going to hear is everybody had a coin collection that was stolen. I inherited a coin collection that was worth $1 million, and somebody stole it. You hear that so often at flea markets. I don't think if you're going to coin shows, I don't think that you have to put up with that so much. I think those people are weeded out. But at the flea market, where sometimes some of those people that show up there are desperate for something to talk to somebody about, and you end up in that conversation. But it's just a weird business, you know. You run into it everywhere. But I thought that I would include these stories. If anybody sets out to be a coin seller, you're going to have everybody trying to blow up all kinds of smoke. It just know your own stuff and stand your ground, because there's a lot of ridiculous claimants out there. You know, a lot of folks have strange ideas. But that's all I have to say about those three instances. But it was odd that it happened. All of them coin related. All of them super, super weird. And they all happened within about a two and a half hour span. And made for a weird day. Made for a weird day as a attempted coin dealer. But that's all I got to say about that.
If you've enjoyed this presentation, then please give it a like and view some of my other material. If you like that as well, then please subscribe. But thank you for viewing.